The number one question I get every single day is Brad Underwood done recruiting high school players? All right, Illini Nation, let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. My name is Sonny Verma, your host here at Locked On Illini, where I continue to provide you coverage daily. That's right. Every single day, you can count on me for 25 to 35 minutes of Illini content. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you've hit that subscribe button. And trust me, just hit that like button because then the channel itself will be shared to other Illini fans just like you. So for today's episode, I wanted to go a different angle. I know over the past week or so, I've asked you guys to send me whatever questions you might have. You can either send it to me via email at talkillini@gmail.com. You can send the question via our Discord, which we've grown to over 300 Illini fans all across the country. The link should be in the description. Or you can leave a 5-star review on your favorite audio platform. Just leave a question there, and I'm basically going to put it all together for a mailbag. But what I've noticed since that request is every day, and I'm not exaggerating when I say every day, whether it's social media or whether it is my email, I get variations of the question of, is Brad Underwood and Illinois essentially done recruiting the traditional high school player that we've kind of gotten used to recruiting, or at least we were used to recruiting at one point? And I think it's a very fair question. I think it's a very valid question, and it's something which is kind of worth digging into. Now, obviously, Illinois does have 2 freshmen coming in to next year's class. It's Brandon Lee from New Jersey and Keaton Wagler. He's from Kansas, both, by the way, who are Mr. Basketballs of their state. Now, traditionally, of course, Illinois, at least recently in the Brad Underwood era, been able to pull in top 10, top 20 classes. This year, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. And it's worth to kind of inspect on whether that's ever going to be the case again. Now, I will be clear when I start off this conversation, there's a qualifier here, right? Like technically, Kasparis and Will Riley were freshmen last year, but they were international freshmen. So for today's topic, I'm just going to stick to the traditional American, 17, 18-year-old prospect. Is Illinois still going to be recruiting those guys? Now, obviously, none of us really know the answer to that question. So for me, I just kind of wanted to have a kind of sort of discussion. It all matters with Brad Underwood, you have to see that he's willing to adjust strategies sometimes halfway through. That's always been one of, in my opinion, his strongest suits. He came up with a very high-pressure defensive team, and he's built a inside-out team and outside-in team, and now we've got one of the most offensively efficient teams in the country. Whenever there's an adjustment that needs to be made, Brad Underwood will make it. Again, he has pulled in top 5, top 6 classes in the past before, but let's maybe take a second and, now that Illinois has had 2 relatively very successful seasons in a row, how were those teams built? When you take a look at 2 years ago, that Elite 8 team, who were the 2 best players on that basketball team? The 2 best players on that team were Terrence Shannon Jr. and Marcus Domask. Terrence was obviously a transfer coming in from Texas Tech, and Marcus Domask made the jump for his last season. He was coming from the Missouri Valley Conference, and those 2 were the key guys on your team that led us to the most successful team we've had in 20 plus years. You had a mainstay in Coleman Hawkins on that basketball team, so it's not like completely transfer guided, but your 2 best players certainly were not with the Illini from the beginning of their careers. Then we look at last year's team. Again, I don't know how you want to classify Kasparis and Will Riley, but I'm not going to necessarily count them. When you're talking about traditional freshmen, you're talking about guys like, Morez Johnson. And that's where, even though I didn't want to mention his name anymore on the show, I feel like at least for this topic, it's absolutely applicable and something that's worth discussing. When you talk about recruiting the traditional freshman, you build up that relationship for 2 years, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it might take. And even if you get a commitment early, you know that other teams are always going to try to sway your guys over. And ultimately, it's just all about the relationship that you kind of build with that individual, the kind of relationship you build with their family, their inner circle. And you basically just hold your breath until signing day and wait to see if they ultimately commit to you. And I think Morez Johnson Jr. is a lesson in all of this for all of us. And I think it may have taught Brad Underwood himself a lesson. Morez was a kid who was committed for 3 years in high school before he ever stepped foot on Champaign. If you're talking about what were supposed to be good, solid relationships, Morez Johnson was it. If you're talking about the type of embodiment of a kid who should not leave your program, well, again, Morez was it. Regardless of what ultimately happens with Morez at Michigan, I do think that maybe there was kind of an eye-opener for Brad and the staff. It's not that other programs don't recruit preps. Obviously the best program in the Big Ten Conference, Purdue, Matt Painter, he makes a living off of building those relationships and developing the talent from high school onto whenever usually Purdue players don't necessarily make it to the NBA. That's a difference between Illinois and Purdue's programs. But essentially, maybe you'd rather prefer the Purdue method where you can count on them to stay 3-4 years and have a very productive college career. Some of you, understandably don't care about what these players do once they leave the orange and blue. But I think Brad is kind of evaluating his own situation. He's got Orlando Antigua. He's got Jeff Alexander. And with that, he's got assets that really nobody else in the country has. And I know that sounds kind of like I'm exaggerating, but I don't think I am. When it comes to international relationships and recruiting, I don't think anybody can match Illinois at this point. Look, there's other teams that might still be able to offer you more money. We know BYU, but I'm strictly talking about the relationship side. And we know that Illinois, again, may not be able to offer you the most money, but they can absolutely compete with the big dogs. And when you're close enough when it comes to the dollar figure, sometimes the relationship itself can make the difference. Just take a look at our starting lineup next season. Kylan Boswell, transfer. Andre Stojakovic, transfer. For the sake of this conversation, I'm going to say both Ivisics are starting. Tomislav Zvonimir. Zvonimir is obviously a transfer. Tomislav, a recruit from Europe. Mihailo Petrovic, a recruit from Europe. Those are 5 guys who are not homegrown in any sort of the way. But regardless of that, Illinois is showing up as top 15 in preseason rankings when it comes to the college basketball season next year. One of the things I've always really respected about Brad Underwood is that he's willing to zig when everyone else is zagging. If Illinois wants to build its reputation competing for top 5, top 10 classes, American-focused classes against the Dukes, against the Kentuckys, more often than not, we're going to lose those battles because we're not Duke, we're not Kentucky, we're not North Carolina. We don't have that sort of status when it comes to the United States. But I don't think that's necessary anymore. When you take a look at the college basketball landscape today, I hate saying this, but it's more of a business than it has ever been in the past. Now it strictly is, especially in the era of this transfer portal. It's a year-to-year type of transaction every single year. And again, no matter, even if you have a kid locked in to your program when he's in high school for 3 years, after his freshman year, he can decide to leave and there's nothing you can do about it. So in a way, I kind of think it makes sense for what Brad and the staff is kind of doing. We know we have the NIL funds to compete with anybody. We know, knock on wood, of course, that Illinois has won 20 plus games 5 seasons in a row. So we have a history of success. We're arguably the second best team in the Big Ten Conference over the last X amount of years. We're producing players into the NBA draft. We did it with Io. We did it with Terrence Shannon Jr. And it looks like we're about to do it with both Kasparis Jakucionis and Will Riley. Illinois is becoming a destination where other people are going to want to play. And so if you are really building your roster from year to year, why not just build your roster year to year? Sure, of course, if you get a kid like Coleman Hawkins who can come in as a freshman and not get deterred and stay loyal for 4 years and play 4 years for you, that's a great story. But let's just be honest here. That doesn't happen anymore. Now the top freshmen in the country want to come to a program and they want it catered around them, catered around their games. They want to play 20, 25, 30 minutes a game so that they can showcase themselves for the NBA. And even when you do cater to them, as Brad did with Jaden Epps, as he did with Morez Johnson, they still might. So looking back, and not just on those two, but just looking at the big picture, I think it kind of makes sense to see if Brad Underwood can continue on the strategy that he's on right now. Recruiting top American talent, anybody can do that. Why? Because everybody is already doing that. But you're going to be competing against the North Carolinas. As I mentioned before, the Blue Bloods. Right now, Illinois has an advantage that most of this country doesn't have. And again, that's the relationships that they have out in Europe. I'm not saying this is a foolproof system. I think this year is really going to dictate just how much we can rely on the international presence that Illinois is relying on. Look, right now, I picture Illinois as the top 4 Big Ten team. But I've talked about this. In the worst case scenario, if the chemistry just never develops this season and the Europeans can't quite adjust to the physicality or the speed of the American game, then you know what? Brad's going to have to adjust again. Good thing is that, as I said before, Brad's good at adjusting. And then all of a sudden we may have to swing the pendulum back into recruiting American preps, or at least finding more local type of basketball players. But I think right now, I'm kind of open to seeing how this little experiment is going to work. I like the fact that Tomislav is going to be 22 years old this year. I like the fact that Mihailo Petrovic is going to come over here in playing his first year in college basketball against guys who have played 4 years of college basketball. He's going to be older than that. I think right now it does make sense that talent plus experience can win you championships. We already see such a big influx of European talent at the NBA level. And I've always said that Brad has always kind of had his eyes towards the future. And because we see all that European talent at the NBA level, I kind of want to see if Brad's experiment of bringing them over maybe a year or two earlier, letting them play at the college basketball level, especially now that they can get paid salaries similar to here, what they were getting paid in Europe. Why not? Let's see what happens. Look, Brad knows this is risky. Brad knows the nation's eyes are on him to see if this experiment is going to work. Again, I'll just say, I just love the fact that he's willing to do it. He's willing to try it. And the roster that he's brought in for next season, I'll be honest, I'm very optimistic about it. And I can't wait to see if the results show on the basketball court. But the good thing is, even if it doesn't, we know we have the head coach who can make adjustments. And if it means going back to the high school prep level, Brad Underwood has no problem doing that. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways to play smart and win big. Hey, look, if you're watching every game and you feel like you've got a pretty good read on what's going on, why not back it up with the same game parlay? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And welcome back to Locked On Illini. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Again, I appreciate all of you. We hit 3,100 subscribers on YouTube over the weekend. A sincere thank you to this big community that we're growing here on this channel. I hope you enjoyed the last segment where we talked about whether Brad Underwood's going to continue or recruiting the top American players. And one of the reasons he might not be is what I'm about to talk about now. And that's the transfer portal. Every offseason, it feels like college basketball turns into a free-for-all, at least recently. Big names are entering the transfer portal. Schools are panicking. Fans are hitting refresh 500 times a day. But this offseason, while some programs were going through full rebuilds, Brad Underwood and Illinois took a different route. And the result is one of the highest quality portal hauls in the entire country. And now I'm going to explain why Illinois doesn't need quantity because it nailed the quality, and how Andre Stojakovic and Ivisic could be difference makers, and why this approach sets Illinois up for a potential deep March run. First, let's just get some perspective. The transfer portal can be absolute chaos. Players are looking for better roles. Players are looking for a bag, a paycheck, and programs are scrambling to fill rosters when they have unexpected departure. But this year, unlike years in the past, Illinois was well prepared to deal with the offseason. Sure, they lost Morez Johnson Jr., and that one's going to sting. And sure, losing Trey White doesn't help. But they did have some key players returning, which in turn built a strong foundation and a clear vision moving forward. Illinois brought in 6 players altogether this year, and only 2 of them are from the transfer portal, and that's Andre Stojakovic and EvanMiya Ivisic. On paper, that doesn't sound like a huge splash, but in terms of quality of talent, Illinois is ranked 4th in the nation in incoming transfer quality per EvanMiya.com. Let me repeat that. Evan, one of the most respected analytic minds out there, has Illinois as the 4th highest when it comes to incoming transfer quality, only behind Michigan, UConn, and Louisville. That's elite territory. So how does EvanMiya calculate all this? It might be a little bit confusing, so I'll try to simplify it. It's a stat called Bayesian Performance Rating, or BPR. Essentially, it projects a player's overall value for next season. The higher the number, the more impactful the player is expected to be. Illinois' portal class earned a 3.73 transfer rating, which is top 5 in the country. So what does that tell us? Illinois didn't chase after filler pieces, and they really never had to hit the panic button. They focused on high impact players who actually move the needle. It's not about winning the offseason headline. It's about building a roster that can win in March. And Underwood understood that. And now the numbers are backing it up. Let's first start with EvanMiya. The guy brings a rare combination of size and skill. A kid who's actually taller than his brother Tomislav, over 7 feet, 8.5 points, 4.3 rebounds per game at Arkansas. He shot 37.6% from three-point land. He averaged 1.9 blocks in just 19 minutes a game. That's elite defensive production. Now, I'm not saying he's an elite defensive player. Obviously, him moving side to side is going to be an issue. But when you take a look at the bigs on this basketball team, Tomislav, his brother, you're talking about David Mirkovic, Jason Jakstis. What you don't really have in there is an interior presence, a shot blocker. I think Tomislav is fine defensively, but he wasn't known in any sort of way as a shot blocker. But now EvanMiya, because of his height, I think can deter or at least give opposition second thoughts about attacking the rim. EvanMiya graded Ivisic with a defensive BPR of 2.7, which is actually the highest on the Razorbacks roster. Again, he gives Illinois rim protection, floor spacing, and hopefully some sort of defensive versatility. Think about how valuable that is along guys like Tomislav, his brother, Ben Hummerkaus, and David Mirkovic. In a front court where everybody can stretch the floor, EvanMiya also gives you potential to be able to protect the rim, which is what modern basketball is all about. And then let's just talk about Andre Stojakovic. Yeah, then the last name is going to catch attention. The son of sharpshooter Peja Stojakovic. Andre's game is much more than that, however. He averaged 17.9 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1.2 blocks per game at Cal. Solid two-way numbers, and he's not just a pure scorer. His BPR, 1.61 on offense, 0.52 on defense, and his overall BPR of 2.13 was the third best on Cal's roster. He's a high usage scorer who thrives in isolation and mid-range creation. And now picture him in Illinois' offense, where there's more spacing, where there's certainly going to be more talent around him, and less defensive attention on him compared to what he had to deal with both at Cal and at Stanford. No, he's not an elite shooter yet, but in this system, with better looks, I think there's breakout potential at the very least. And that's the part I want Illinois fans to understand. You don't necessarily need a full roster overhaul every single year. I'm sure all of us are glad that we're not doing what we did last offseason. The key is you need difference makers. And it looks like Underwood identified some of the gaps. Front court rim protection and shooting, Ivisic is going to fill that. A go-to wing scorer to replace Will Riley and Jakucionis, Stojakovic fills that. And by focusing on quality over quantity, Illinois preserved team chemistry, leadership, and identity. Look around the Big Ten. Michigan is overhauling. Indiana keeps swinging and missing. Illinois, they're built to contend again. This wasn't a splashy portal cycle, but it was a smart portal cycle. And that's how you build sustained success. So where does this leave Illinois heading into next season? You have your foundation between Boswell, Rogers, Ivisic, Hummerkaus. You added two high-quality portal players in Andre and EvanMiya. You've got potentially a freshman with upside. Expectations should be high. Top 20 teams? Yeah. Second weekend of the NCAA tournament? Absolutely. And if everything clicks, chemistry, health, shooting improvements, there's no reason Illinois can't be in the mix for the Big Ten title. The portal can be chaotic, but Brad Underwood, at least this offseason, played it perfectly. Less was more. And in this case, less might be the difference between good and great. And welcome back to Locked On Illini. And we have some breaking news, which I'm not going to be able to get too in-depth now that the show is almost over. But the University of Illinois just announced, as I was recording, contract extensions for both football coach Bret Bielema and basketball coach Brad Underwood. Underwood's deal is a new 6-year contract with an annual salary that's going to begin at $4.4 million. And Bret Bielema has a new 6-year contract and an annual salary that would begin at $7.7 million. This is fantastic news if you are an Illini fan, and it just shows you why Josh Whitman is the best in the world at what he does. I'm going to have more thoughts on this on tomorrow's episode. That way I can deep dive a little bit more and get more details on what exactly happened. But again, this is the joys of recording, right? You never know when news is going to break. Before I let you all go, I did want to give a couple NBA draft combine shooting results. On Tuesday, Will Riley, shooting off the dribble, went 26 for 30, which tied for first in the entire draft combine. Spot up shooting, 16 out of 25, which tied for 20th. The three-point star drill, he finished 13 out of 25, which tied for 36th. The three-point side drill, he finished 14 out of 25, which is tied for 20th. And free throws, he made 9 out of 10, which tied for 12th. Kasparis, off the dribble, went 16 for 30, which tied for 41st. Yikes. Spot up, however, he made 17 out of 25, which tied for 14th. Three-point star, 16 out of 25, which tied for 12th. Three-point side, 14 out of 27, which tied for 20th. And finally, free throw, 8 out of 10, which tied for 33. And finally, day 2 of golf is over. Illinois still has a 3-stroke lead over Oklahoma State. And just a friendly reminder to the top 5 out of 13 teams will advance to the next round. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Illini today your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan of the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to on podcasts. Again, on your way out, make sure please hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We've got content going on all day, every day, in particular on this channel. I've got more notes than I know what to do with. So if you don't want to miss the thing, make sure you are subscribed and also join the Discord. Again, we're talking Illini sports and life in general, pro sports, everything all day long. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.